Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Fiddle. Today's miniature project is a working full-length oval mirror with candle accents. As always, don't forget to check the link in the description labeled Scavenger Hunt. That'll take you to a free printable pattern and the list of materials that you'll need to make this piece for yourself. Okay, are you ready to get started? The first two pieces we're going to cut out are the top and bottom. I chose two pieces of pretty thick craft wood and it was something else to cut through, let me tell you. I had to go back and forth a few times between my easy cutter and knife, but I did finally manage to get both pieces cut out. Set those aside for now, and we're going to grab our chipboard. The next piece we're going to cut out is the long strip. This will be the side walls for the base of the mirror. For this piece, instead of cutting each individual side, we're going to keep it one strip and bend it at the corners. Lay your strip of cardboard over top of your pattern piece. Center it the best you can, then mark where the drill holes are on your cardboard. Then using your ruler, bend at your marks. If your piece of cardboard is long enough to reach all the way around, then you don't need to cut out the back piece, but if it isn't long enough, you can trim it to the back corners and then cut out the pattern piece labeled back sidewall. And I know mine's glued down here, but don't worry about that quite yet. First, we need to mark and drill the holes in the top piece. Your drill bit will need to be as big as the skewers or dowels that you'll be using to build the piece. Okay, now you can glue the cardboard down. Because this is the underside and our wood is so thick, we don't have to worry about covering the holes on this side. The next piece we're going to glue down is the back sidewall if your other sidewall strip didn't go all the way around. Now we're ready to make a sandwich by gluing the top and the bottom half together. After gluing the two pieces together, you can use a silicone tool to wipe away any excess glue. Then set it aside to dry. Now we're going to turn our attention to the mirror portion. For this, you'll need an outer circle. That would be the red circle labeled backing. To keep in theme with the bottom half of the piece, I went with a thick wood. But I think that chipboard or even corrugated cardboard would be a good option as well. For the mirror portion, you'll need some reflective mirror type stuff. I have used clear plastic and aluminum foil, but it really didn't look the greatest. I finally found some flexible mirror stuff on Amazon. It worked, but I had to be very careful while cutting it because it cracked a lot. But thankfully you can't tell in the finished piece. For the burlap twine ribbon stuff, this is the pattern that I chose. I have quite a few, but I thought the inside tiny weaves would be really good for getting the curve to look right. It is up to you on what kind you use. I will say the smaller the detail in the middle, the better off you are. But before I glued it to the mirror, I had to do quite a bit of prep work. And depending on your ribbon, you may have to too. I cut mine down the center lengthwise until I thought I had about what I needed to wrap all the way around the frame once. After I got my strip cut, I test fit it around the mirror to see how the curvature went and realized that I'm going to have to snip the plastic thread that holds this together in between each one of the little wavy brown lines. This did add a little unexpected time, but it does get that curve that you need to get it around the mirror. The test fit went much better the second time, and I was ready to glue it down. And I'm starting to get sick, so I sound kind of funny. Anyway, to glue my trim down, I started at the very bottom in the center and slowly worked my way around the edge in small sections at a time until I made my way all the way back down to the bottom. Make sure you have it set where you want it before you trim the excess off, then set it aside to dry while we move on to the bottom piece. I used the same trim as before, but instead this time I'm going to use the outside brown loopy loopies. I trimmed off a piece long enough that I thought would wrap all the way around the base, but this also meant that I had to pick off all the little white bits that I'm cutting up. Towards the end I decided to use tweezers and that helped out a lot. I came up with the idea for using the burlap trim after I made the bed for the pink room with the wire details, but I have to say that I liked both results. Although I did consider painting this trim a metallic color like I did for the six-sided bed, but I changed my mind. Speaking of painting, that's what we're doing next. For this piece, I went with a dark burgundy brown reddish color. I tried my best to match the pre-painted beads that I was going to use for the rest of the piece. And I did paint the mirror trim too, but I didn't hit record. And for the trim around the mirror, it's best if your paint is a little on the thin side. For the trim around the base, I did pre-paint it, but the only reason I did that was because the glue I'm using stays white, and I wanted to make sure that I had some color soaked into the string before I glued it down. If you're using a clear or invisible glue, you won't even have to worry about it. Trim off the excess and then align the ends of your string so it looks like it's all one piece. Let it dry completely before moving on to the next step. Now that the glue is dry, we can add one more layer of paint. For the next part, you'll need some skinny dowels. I was out, so I improvised with a strip from a bamboo placemat. I use this stuff for flooring in the pink room. Before we can build with it, we need to give it a coat of paint in your choice of color. I went with the same color as the rest of the piece, so it would blend in if there were any spots where you could see it. Once it's dry, we're going to move on to measuring and cutting. The first two posts we're going to cut are the front short ones. On a side note, I don't think any of the furniture in this room match with the color. Well, I guess it's not so bad. The bed and the mirror match, and the bookcase and chair match. I'm just not sure what to make next for this room. Anyway, back to what we were doing. The next two pieces we're going to measure and cut are the two taller posts and back. Okay, back to the conversation. I put the sewing machine in the room helping it take up space, but I'm really not sure if I want to keep it there. Oh, I had a thought. Maybe I could do another piece for the baby set. I've been hanging on to a photo of an 18th century scary bouncer that I would like to try to make. But that is the only photo that I can find of it, so I don't know. We will see. Okay, we're ready for the next part. Before we glue anything together, we're going to dry fit the rest of the pieces to make sure that everything fits together right. This will also help you decide the best bead layout that you want to use for your piece. First, test fit the posts to make sure they fit and are straight. If you want to give yourself a guideline, you can mark with a pencil on each one of the posts how far you stuck it into the hole so you'll know where to glue it later. The first beads we're going to work with are the oval ones. We need to drill a hole through the center side of 6 of them. But if you did want to have knobs on the end of the mirror adjustments, then you can drill a hole straight through 2 of the beads. Now you can go through your stash and decide what beads you want in what order. The one thing to keep in mind while you're doing this is that each of the intersections you will need one of the beads with holes in it. I went with a barrel bead in between 2 of the oval beads. And pretty much the same pattern for the back pieces. And remember, for this one we need the beads with the holes at the same level. Okay, back to the conversation. In between recordings, I've went and searched for more photos of that type of bed. I did find a better photo, and I found 2 other pieces that I might try to make. All 3 of them are kind of challenging in their own way, and of course, they won't be exact, so it's trying to figure out how to best make them with what I have in my own style. I think I'm going to start with the bouncer first, and then maybe try one of the other 2 pieces. Okay, for the next part, we need to measure the bar that goes from the front to the back. And don't mind my poor impression of a bobblehead. You'll need 2 of these pieces, 1 for each side. Once you have them cut, test fit them with the beads of your choice to make sure that everything fits okay. We have one more piece to measure and cut, and that is the bar for the mirror itself. This is where you would want to account if you wanted the rod to go all the way through to where you could have a bead cap on the ends. Speaking of beads, you'll need to take one of your oval beads that don't have any holes in it and cut it in half lengthwise. Be careful while doing this, especially if your beads are coated. Okay, now we're ready to start gluing. The first thing we're going to glue is the bar across the back of the mirror, and the two bead halves are going to act as brackets along the back of the mirror. While the glue is still wet, hold it up to your base and make sure that you have your bar going across in the right place. Once you have it in place, set it aside to dry, and we're going to start final assembly with gluing on the base. While that's drying, we have one more bit of paint to add, and that is to cover up all this yuckiness on the back of the mirror. Now we can put the mirror in place and start working on the candles. First, you'll need two flat round beads, or even buttons would work. You may need to scuff up the surface of your beads or buttons so that way the glue sticks to it. I use super glue and baking soda for this part, but if you have E6000, that would work really good too. This green is a little bright for the piece, but it does match the color of the room. To make the candles, you'll need a clear straw cut to the length you would like and something to hold it with so our fingers don't get in the way. You'll also need some gel super glue. So far I've found that Loctite works the best, not so much Gorilla Glue. And lastly, baking soda. When you use baking soda over top of super glue, it causes a chemical reaction that hardens the glue instantly. The reason for using gel super glue is because it holds its structure, and when you dip it into the baking soda, it'll harden that way, looking like candle wax drops. Please keep in mind that this is a chemical reaction and it may burn your skin, so please be careful. We're going to start by sealing up one end of the straw. This will give us a better area to build off of, and if you've never done it before, an idea of how it works. Once you have the base layer down and a better understanding, you can start to build up around the edges to make it look more candle-like. Once you're satisfied with how the end looks, add some glue to your bead or button and then place your candle. You can use a tool to poke the glue around and get the drips where you want them before adding more baking soda. When you're happy with how they look, make sure you put one more coat of baking soda to make sure everything's cured. And for the wick, I used the end of a toothpick colored with a black marker. I've also used wire and string if you need other options. If you don't like the way that the clear straws look, you can also paint these white to make them look a little more opaque. And with that, it brings us to the end of our tutorial. I hope this gives you some ideas on your next project piece. And always don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, as it all helps me out a lot. Thank you, Ginger, and I'll see you next time.